Hello everyone, we are the Group 5 and we will report the case study about crisis of tourism.
Background of the study: the travel business has been severely harmed during this peak tourism season. Bohol, which is regarded to be the safest travel destination in the Philippines. Earthquakes and subsequent aftershocks in resort in Anilao and Mabini in Batangas were deserted during Holy Week. President Duterte should prioritize tourism because it is the Philippines' engine of economic growth. We should take quick measures to address this situation, especially considering safer travel location in Southeast Asia, with similar tourist attraction drew 1 million tourists last year, more than doubling the amount in the Philippines.
And here are our statement of the problem. Number one, how can the government sectors of the Philippines help tourists cope with threats given by the ongoing violence while traveling? Number two, what are the difficulties of tourism in the Philippines? Number three, what is the impact of terrorism and violence on tourists and the citizens of the Philippines? And number four, what are the possible outcomes in the way of responding to these situations?
For our first problem, how can the government sectors of the Philippines will help the tourists cope with threat given by the ongoing violence while traveling? Violence, such as tourist beheading, kidnapping, terrorist threats affect tourism in negative way. This frightens tourists that causes decrease of tourists in the Philippines. Because it is terrifying to travel to places with existing violence issue. Secure all places by assigning help desks and police offices in tourist spots and tourist guides. Gives emergency contact to tourists to give advance information about suspicious activities in given area. Lastly, having flyers where has do's and don'ts. Second, what are the difficulties and struggle of tourism in the Philippines? Difficulties and struggle in tourism in terms of earthquake, terrorist threats, and violence inside the country, especially in route when traveling, which lead to lowering the numbers of tourists. It is because of not enough security in specific tourist attraction. Sometimes it leads to cancellation of booking, making plan for tourists and travelers to avoid difficulties during their tour. This will help tourists to enjoy their vacations. Seminars and training for every tour guide about preparedness in, in different crises or crisis management.
What is the impact of terrorism and violence on tourists and the citizens of the Philippines? In the place where there are a lot of people, such as metro train station, festival, performance venues, and retail mall. Be especially caution in every building you enter. Double check the placement of the emergency exit. Don't forget to keep an eye on your valuables.
What are the possible outcomes in the way of responding to these situations? It helps to maintain the country's culture and legacy. Also, communities are strengthened, good social services are provided. On the other hand, tourism in the Philippines will not be taken away. A lot of tourists and visitors will have the courage to visit the Philippines. Primarily, the economy of the country will increase and many Filipino citizens could help their families for their everyday living.
In provided recommendation from ACA number 1, wherein violence such as the beheading of tourists, kidnapping, and terrorist threats negatively affects the tourist industry. In order to be safe, secure all the places by assigning police officers in tourist spots and having a help desk where the tour guides and the person appointed to the desk will give emergency contact. wherein the tourist will provide advance information about the suspicious activities in a given area. On the other hand, having flyers where it has do's and don'ts that serves as the guidelines in order to have proper communication and visiting around the areas. Thank you for listening, members of the group Alcantara Jeremy Angelos G, Burgos Rochelle Shane T, Sena Ashley May R, Montiero Mia Mariel E, and Vertudes Paula May R.